Hello, Team Swole. This is Ricky with SwoleYourRollSports.com. I'm going to be going through some Draftkings stuff tonight for the NFL, which starts here in a couple of hours. I've been working on it all week. Going to talk about a few things. First is we have a weather page now on Swole Your Roll, where you can get up-to-date weather information. This time of year, you definitely need to be looking at this information, especially concerning kickers and possible quarterbacks that you might be wanting to select. Specifically right now, Aaron Rodgers, mostly cloudy, flurries until evening. You know, something to consider in a Thursday lineup on FanDuel specifically. Not as much on Draftkings, as they have the late game swap, and having a $10,000 quarterback on Draftkings isn't the hardest thing to get rid of, considering you can replace him with about anyone if you see the weather gets a little worse. Where you get into a little bit of trouble with the late game swap is if you had like a $3,500 guy on Draftkings and you wanted to get rid of him for the Sunday game, because there's not a plethora of guys like that you can just throw on in. Anyway, we've added a lot of stuff to our website, some odds, weather, a lot of cool stuff, so make sure to check that out. Without further ado, I'm going to get into a video walkthrough here. Make sure you guys can see everything. Let's make this a little smaller. Okay, so here we are. We're on DraftKings, and we're going to do a little video walkthrough. This is going to try to be a little shorter. Since I've done all the work all week long, I will try to talk to you about a few of the reasons why I'm picking some of the guys that I'm picking for this particular team, and there's more guys to choose than just what I'm putting in this team, so feel free to adjust as needed. The first quarterback I want to take a look at is a guy named Matthew Stafford. He's in Detroit this week. They play in a dome. Tampa has been terrible against the pass. He's got Megatron back, and Tampa's actually reasonable against the rush. Reggie Bush still having injury problems. I'd imagine that Detroit needing to pick up a win here is definitely going to try to air the ball out. Both Calvin Johnson and Golden Tate have excellent matchups. So for this particular lineup here and a different scoring system than FanDuel, I'm going to lock in Matthew Stafford as my quarterback. I'm going to move over to defensive and special teams now. FanDuel and DraftKings definitely are certainly different the way they do their salaries. DraftKings from week to week are a lot sharper in the way that they do their salaries. So I actually have some knowledge of the algorithm that they use and some of the thought process behind that. So I actually use DraftKings a little bit in determining some of my player values on FanDuel, and run some Z-scores in order to basically see how the sites value the different players. But all that's done on the back end. For this video now, we'll just start picking some players and some defenses and stuff like this. The top defense on the board here is Houston at Jacksonville. I know it's Jacksonville, but they are on the road. I'd probably pass on that right there. I particularly am going to probably go back to the well here. Detroit's had a very tough defense all year. Good defensive line. Tampa's got all sorts of problems. They're in Detroit. I could easily see going with the Lions here, or possibly the Jets with some different weather problems here. But I think I'm going to pass on the Minnesota against the Jets. I think I end up going with the Lions for this particular lineup. Tampa's had lots of problems again. So we're going to plug them in and head to the running back position here. In the running back position, obviously the full point PPR and the different scoring make things a little bit different here on DraftKings. One guy I am interested in this week, at least taking a look at it, is Matt Forte. He plays in the game tonight, and a lot of people are going to want exposure to this game particularly. The line in this game is somewhat reasonably close. I suspect the under in this game, just in terms of I think Dallas is really going to try to control tempo and run the ball a bit with their heavy running back and their offensive line. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Forte has a very good game. Dallas this year is 24th weighted against the run, and also on in terms of receiving backs out of the backfield, probably middle of the pack. They've had problems, in general against tight ends and covering backs out of the backfield. So Forte is an interesting option here at 8,700. So for this particular lineup, we're going to lock him in. More specifically, I know a lot of guys like exposure in the Thursday night game, and this will get us a little exposure in that game right here. We're going to move to the next back, and I'm going to go to the well here and put in Chris Johnson in this back, or in this lineup here. Where's Chris Johnson at? I think he's... Why am I missing him? There we go, 3,400. You'll have to monitor that. Again, these salaries are made before the Monday night game was over, and he had 105 yards, 17 carry game. He's reasonable at receptions out of the backfield as well, something that Minnesota definitely struggles against, and like I said in the other video, Minnesota's actually pretty good against the pass, and luckily the Jets have no pass game, so I suspect they run the ball 35 or 40 times in this game, trying to keep it close, although they could easily try to see what they have in Geno Smith, although I think they already know what they have, and maybe let it loose. But at this point, if they're trying to win, they're going to be running the ball, and I suspect Chris Johnson gets somewhere between 18 and 22 carries for that game, or touches specifically. So that leaves us $5,300 per player. I'm going to come over here to tight end next, and I like doing my receivers and flex last. Some tight ends that I'm looking at this week: Antonio Gates, Kyle Rudolph is an interesting matchup against the Jets. The Jets are abysmal against tight ends. They gave up a pretty decent game to the Dolphins tight end Deion Sims, who's their backup tight end last week. So I could certainly be talked into Kyle Rudolph at 3,300 this week. Gresham's 3,200, where he's 5,200 on FanDuel. That's an interesting one. Jarrett Cook, another one who's $3,000. He's 4,900 on FanDuel. But I think I go to the well the same way I went on FanDuel here, and I want to put in my number one tight end. If you exclude Gronkowski, who's $8,000, and plug him here at $4,700, and continue to move on. Wide receivers this week. Obviously, for a cash game, I don't particularly like pairing Matt Stafford with Megatron or Golden Tate, so I'm probably going to move off of those this week and see if I can find a little value guy and work from there. It's an interesting price over here. Cordell Patterson is $3,000, absolutely the league minimum. He has a complete premium matchup. The Jets are 29th against wide receiver twos, 32nd against the slot guy. They've struggled a lot. At $3,000 in a full point PPR, Patterson's game log obviously has not been good recently, but he is an interesting option. Somebody I definitely would consider. I think for this lineup here, I'm going to pass on Patterson and come back to another guy that I've been looking at that has a very low salary compared to his FanDuel salary, and that's Marquise Colston. You could easily go Kenny Stills here as well, but I think Colston's worth a look. He's had a couple of reasonable games. He had an 18-point game here against Baltimore a couple games ago, ever since Cooks has gone down, and I think he provides a little bit of upside for $4,500 for this particular lineup. I like some exposure to New Orleans at home. Obviously, everyone knows Drew Brees is 10 times better at home, and so for this particular lineup here, I'm going to leave him in. That leaves us $5,800 a player. I typically try to look for possible value guys again. One guy that's showing up, and this is just kind of like daring you to play him, is Pierre Garçon. I really don't know what to make of him, but it's a very juicy salary. He's dirt cheap on FanDuel too, $5,600. He's really struggled. 3 receptions for 9 yards, 3 for 34. He's just, even in a full point PPR, just really struggling to do anything. So I don't have the. I'm not going to put him in here, but it's definitely somebody you guys should consider when you're trying to build a lineup this week. The next guy I want to look at on this site is a guy who had a really good game last week, and I know he's on the same team as Antonio Gates, and I typically don't like to do that, but it's Eddie Royal, and I can maneuver this around. He in a full point PPR at 4,400 off of a 9 reception, 81 yard game, 22 points. One thing that I look for here, and I think against the general public, it becomes somewhat contrarian when you look and you see that New England is, it's just the third worst matchup. I think the average person comes on here and they're just like avoiding situations like this. Obviously, our stats show that he's got a much better matchup like that. I think it's the 22nd best matchup against New England. For this particular lineup here, though, I'm gonna stay clear of Eddie Royal, but it's an interesting one to look at. Because I have Antonio Gates in this lineup, we're going to pass on him now. The next guy I am going to plug in is a guy in this game, Sunday Night Football in San Diego. Looks like no weather problems at this point. He's going against San Diego. I feel like this might be a nice game for Tom Brady coming off of a tough loss last week. And Brandon LaFell, I think, has an excellent matchup this week against San Diego, WR2 and 1 either spot. So we're going to plug him in, and that leaves us $5,600 per player. I typically like to fill out my wide receivers before moving on to flex at $5,600. The next guy I'm going to look for, oh, that's not him over there, is... Oh, I'm only looking at one game right now. I apologize. Let me get all games. Is again Kendall Wright, Tennessee against New York. New York's not really playing for a whole lot right now. 5,400. He's got a premium matchup with Draftkings kind of putting a 9th rank right here, and I'm going to plug him in this lineup. It leaves us $5,900 left right now for the flex position. We're going to see what we have left at the flex for $5,900. Anquan Bolden doesn't really make my list. So we're going to move on from him. Like I said, I've pre-done a lot of this work, and another guy that I like that I know is certainly cheaper than $5,900. He's $4,300 this week, and that is Ruben Randall. Excellent matchup against Tennessee. I could see him doing well. That leaves us $1,600. One guy I was really wanting to get in my lineup this week is a guy named Randall Cobb. I know he is $7,400 on DraftKings. I think he is a better play than Jordy Nelson this week, statistically and from there. So I'm going to plug him into this lineup right here and submit this lineup for now. But this is just a walkthrough. I'm finishing up my lineup for Swole right now, but just giving you guys an idea of what I go through. I have a chart that basically, well, exactly this. It goes through every guy I'm possibly targeting, their prices on different sites, why I'm choosing them. So again, it's not an arbitrary thing. It's not I watch football, I have an idea so-and-so is going to do well. I typically try to avoid even listening to things where people are like, this is a must-win game for Tom Brady this week. He's going to throw for 400 yards. I stick to the statistics and things that might adjust the statistics and go from there. But I hope I've given you guys some player pool to choose from, a little exposure in tonight's game. And I'll be posting my lineup on Swole very soon. Thanks for stopping by, guys.